Welcome to Stay Sparked. On this show, we explore how to stay inspired in the modern world through the most profound lessons from Burning Man, relationships, entrepreneurship, psychedelics, spirituality, travel, and more.
On today's episode, we talk about pain.
We talk about our personal experiences of rising above pain.
And we share modalities to help us process, deal, and move through the other side of it.
Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Stay Sparked. We are three longtime friends that have been sharing conversations that have been igniting our souls, and now we love getting to share them with you. I'm Betsy.
I'm Halcyon.
And I am Janus.
We always love starting with gratitude, so I'd love to start us off with my gratitude today is for self-care practices. This morning, I was just really so grateful for the simple habits that have been coming into my life, like dry brushing. I don't know if you guys have gotten into dry brushing, but I'm so grateful that I have committed to building that as a habit. I do it every morning, and it just really supports my lymph flow and soft skin and exfoliation. So I'm grateful for the simple self-care practices.
Beautiful.
How about you, Halcyon?
I am feeling grateful in this moment for male tears. A number of times in the last week, I have cried myself or experienced people crying, seen some celebrities cry in podcast interviews, and really seen a different response where the host wasn't like, "Hey, don't cry, man." And like a male host was like, "Hey, let it out," and just holding space. And I think that I'm an easy crier. And I think that it's important for men to cry. And so I'm just grateful that more and more men are finding that part of themselves and letting it out.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
I could probably use a good one of those myself. So, yeah, I think we should schedule that as a man. And just be like, okay.
Schedule your cry. That's a masculine approach to
So,
emotions.
whatever gets it done.
Schedule it.
Yeah. My gratitude is for a couple of friends in my life, specifically my friends Katya and Lynn, otherwise known as Linfinity. They have been really good friends over the years, and since the arrival of Rumi, my little boy, my little baby boy, they have stepped up in some really important ways for myself and my partner, and have eased some stress and burdens in my life, and have just made my life easier. So I want to thank them without getting into the details. They're awesome people, been friends over a decade, and I really love them both to pieces. So thanks, ladies.
Beautiful shout out. Love that. And I'd love to also, on that note, give a little shout out to our listeners out there. Thank you guys so much. So many of you are dear friends of ours. Maybe some of you are new listeners and are just meeting us. So thank you so much for listening. And we also love to just put a little seed in your ear. If you've been enjoying these, please do take a moment to get on Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star rating, even taking another few seconds to write a review. That helps us to keep these episodes reaching farther and wider. So thank you so much to all our listeners out there. We love you so much and are so grateful for you.
And if you're intimidated by the Apple Podcasts, we get it. So, but you can leave a comment and a review for us on our Instagram as well, and you can still be read on the air. So we're going to try to make this easy for you guys. Please leave a review.
Yeah, thank you so much. We love sharing these conversations with you guys. And this week, we decided to talk about a relevant topic for something that's been happening. So we decided to talk about pain and our experiences of pain in our bodies. John has recently gone through a process of healing his body, and we've been talking a lot about what are the lessons and what are the different things that have been coming up. And there's just so much to tune into around this, because I think it's something that's common for everyone. We all experience pain at some point in our lives, whether that is a physical injury that's acute or a chronic pain. So many different things happen in these physical bodies. And how do we face pain? And so I'd love to start us off with an inquiry with you, John, around your recent process of facing this pain in your body and your healing journey. Has there been any insights or breakthroughs that you've had?
Oh, wow. Well, first, just in case, John and Halcyon are the same person on this show. So, in case you don't know that it's the same person, I am John and Halcyon, and Boo Boo and Fluffy Cat. Okay, awesome.
Boo
My
boo. We're gonna
no,
start calling you Boo Boo.
uh, I will answer to all of those things and Pinky. Yeah, I mean so yeah, I'm in pain as we are doing this, but it is a manageable level. But during the 2.5 weeks during over Christmas time, I experienced a continuous state of pain due to an unpinched nerve that I'd never experienced before. And it was at the time I had no capacity to find any lessons in it. But as I've been able to get it to a place where can be present enough to think and to communicate, and there's been massive aspects of insight. One is that I never fully understood what people were talking about when they talked about living with pain. I think it's almost like when people talk about love, until you've fallen in love, you don't know what the word means. And I don't think I really got what it means to live with pain. Previously, I always kind of had like, it hurts when I do this type of pain. And so I figured, oh, well, the worst case scenario, I just am still and watch TV, or maybe take some painkillers, and the worst case scenario is that I just am bored. But a state of ongoing continuous pain did massive things to my mindset, to my thoughts, to my ability to have relationships, and really opened my eyes to how much of a relationship with pain involves your thoughts and your ability to be disciplined about where you let your mind go.
So connected. Yeah, mind and the body go right together.
Yeah, yeah. I've never had to deal personally with anything approaching like chronic pain. But I think we all know somebody who has, and just kind of went, and I've had a couple friends who really kind of went deep into the process of sharing like their experience and their journey with that, and kind of coming out the other side and healing it in various modalities. But it's really a seems to be a thing where it's a relationship you almost have to navigate in order to get your way through it and out the other side of it. And and I definitely want to acknowledge that there's some people who have had years worth of this and don't really see much. It is a thing that some people have to live with, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that we're not physicians or experts trying to tell people how to heal themselves or anything like that. We're just sharing our own personal experiences with this, and so take it for what you will. But yeah, there's different aspects of it. Like, if we can live like Halcyon, it seems like you lived a fairly, injuries aside, you lived a fairly pain-free life up until very recently. And it can be disconcerting to have that experience of like, yeah, feeling good, my body works and everything else, and then something stops working, and it's like, oh, it's like, I don't know, it's almost like getting slapped with your mortality a little
Yeah.
bit, and that's a tough thing. That's a tough thing to navigate.
Well, I think that injury, as you get a little older in age, any injury or pain starts to have a deeper mental effect. When you're young, you get hurt, you heal quickly, you bounce back, and then the same injury, when you get in your 40s and 50s, doesn't heal at the same speed. And you start to have doctors say things like, yeah, it's probably just going to be that way from now on. You're like, wait, what? And that mindset, and anytime you get an injury of like, is this the way it's going to be from now on? Is this the way it's going to be from now on? And so when I was really in the profound, prolonged pain, people were sharing online some of their insights and their experiences and what they'd done. And I couldn't hear it. In fact, it was so scary to me, the thought that this might be something that I would have to live with forever. As people shared how they did it, I know they were trying to be helpful, but what I heard was this might be something I have to be at this level of pain forever. And to give you an idea of the darkness, I mean, I said I cannot live like this. It was what I was thinking. I started to resent my partner because I thought, if she wasn't in the picture, I could kill myself and at least I'd have a way out. But I'm committed to a life together, and so now I have to stay alive. And so then I wasn't talking to her because there was this like thing that I couldn't stop thinking about. It was I started to really understand when you hear stories of, like, Kurt Cobain was in chronic pain and heroin made it feel better. So he became addicted to heroin, and then he got to a point where just it wasn't worth it. I mean, there were times where if somebody said, "Hey, here is some fentanyl. It's it's going to make the pain go away, but here are all the reasons why you shouldn't do it." I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah. What? It's got rat poison. I don't care. I don't just like I would have done anything to stop it." So I really have a compassion for the struggle, and especially like I think about like the opioid epidemic. It so makes so much sense to me now.
Mm.
Mm. Wow, it's really powerful be able to experience something so deep and to access such a more, it sounds like compassion,
Yeah,
right? Within your own self now to be able to see others and what they go through and have that deeper understanding because now you've had your own embodied experience of facing some of those dark places that come along from feeling so debilitated from sensation in the body. And that's really powerful. And it sounds like you have had some breakthrough because here you are, you seem like you're on the other side of some of that darkness. So
yeah.
what would you say is what was like
What
a ring of hope that you started to climb?
one of the things was starting to talk with enough people that have had experience with healing. But I really think that the big thing was having a noticeable shift where the threshold of my pain went from a always the first priority thought in my mind to a nagging thought that was in my mind. There was a period of time when my boy Asher was visiting and I was playing with him, and I can hear his voice and I can see the blocks and the things that we're building, but it was almost like that was a TV in the background, and all that I really could think about was ow, 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 ow. Or I would be holding hands with my partner Lisa, and I'm at one level I'm aware that I'm holding her hand, but it was like I was underwater and that was all happening above the surface. And it was really isolating and alone. So once the threshold kind of dropped to a point where I could think about what was happening, I could be present with people, then it was like, at least I know, okay, this is something I can live with because the pain is there's room in the pain for me to have moments of presence with anything else.
Mm.
And what I also learned, at least from talking with other people, is that threshold can change as you get used to it and as you work on these mental things about working with the pain, which I say I am a total infant in this. Like, as I talk to people who talk about their many month journeys, it isn't, you don't just get to, put in uh, a meditation tape and wake up and go, okay, cool. Now I have total control over this pain. So, I to go back to one of the things about the compassion, I really felt a massive like heart expansion in the same way that, like, if you've ever just like, oh my gosh, there are people living in a war zone right now, and that's their reality. Like, oh my God, like, and it just like shudders you. I had that same feeling like, oh my God, the number of people, the millions of people that are living in chronic pain, and that is part of their world. Like, it that is one of the massive gifts of this, is I feel this connection to a suffering and humanity that uh, it's beautiful, even though it's horrible.
Mm. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's not, it's tangentially involved, but we're talking about a similar thing. My partner um, recently went to stroll around Balboa Park with our newborn baby with the stroller. And so she's with a stroller and she has to navigate this world with this. And she shared that she got a whole new insight into what people with wheelchairs, for example, have to deal with. It is a different world. It is a different experience. And like, she's like, I can't go that way because I can't get the stroller down there. And just realizing, and you don't get it until you get it, until you're in it. And that's just one aspect of that where it's like, wow, I thought I knew, or I thought I had an idea. I really didn't. And waking up to that, and like we're talking about now, chronic pain is very similar. Like feeling like we get it, but until you're in it, it's yeah, you don't get it until that moment.
That's a deep insight. And coming back to, before we get back into pain, that idea of there's so many things like heartbreak, like you don't get it until you've felt it. And I think that's an important thing as you go through the world, to just in the back of your mind know that you can't really put yourself in anyone's shoes, and to try to leave some space for a level of compassion, that of holding space with things that you really can never understand.
Absolutely. And then to be able to come into a place of recognizing privilege, what a privilege it is to be free of pain at certain times, or what a privilege it is to be able to not be on wheels, to be able to see these gifts that are all around us all the time and not to be taken for granted. I think that's one of the things that comes up a lot in some of the sessions that I do, because I'm a body worker. I do massage therapy and energy work. And one of the things that we focus on a lot with my clients is finding appreciation for the healthy parts, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the pain, and that is the main priority of thought, as you said, right? But when we're free of pain, do we acknowledge one of the main priorities of thought is the sense of liberation and freedom in our movement, right? How often do we pause to appreciate working knees? Right, our knees are so precious. I know personally, I tore my meniscus many years ago, and it was really awful. It was debilitating. It changed everything for me. At that time, I was healing, and I didn't realize before that how important my knees were until one of them went out. And so since then, I really always like to keep coming back to like, wow, my knees are working. My ankles are working. I'm feeling good right now. And I feel like that's sometimes can only come after an injury, right? It's like you just went through this really awful pain in your shoulder and your neck. And it's like, wow, or after you get sick, right? And you come back into the healing, it's like, oh, I'm so grateful to be well. But it's rare that we think about that before, right? So I really love to be able to keep coming back every day, checking in. How am I feeling? Where am I feeling good? Really celebrating. Okay, I'm actually feeling really good in my body. If my low back hurts, then okay, I acknowledge that my low back might hurt, but you know what? My feet feel really good. My head feels really clear. Whatever that is, I think it's an important place to balance, and that takes
Totally.
mindfulness and courage and strength to be able to get into that mindset, because it can be overwhelming sometimes if you do have pain.
And that's why a gratitude practice is so helpful, because your mind doesn't go to what's working. Your mind on its own, without steering it, will go to what's not working, what hurts, what's uncomfortable. That's just the natural flow. And so if you can train yourself, as you were talking about, to when you feel discomfort, to be the little like, and that means that everything else is working, as you are
Mhm.
blowing your nose and feel stuff, you're like, oh, my immune system is kicking ass right now. How often is it? It's always battling things, it's always winning
Yeah,
all the time, but and
totally.
then so when the white blood cells are just crushing it, is when you're witnessing it happening.
Oh, I love that. Yes, totally. It's the mucus is actually a good thing, right?
Right.
I actually like had this thing with a friend of mine where she was blowing her nose a lot, and instead of being like, "Oh, this is so awful. This is so horrible. I feel horrible." It's like, "Thank you, body, for working to get out what needs to get out." So every time she would blow her nose, she would say, "Thank you, mucus. I'm healing. I'm actually getting better." Same thing with like other symptoms, right? When the body is wanting to release and clear out, it's the body's way of getting well. right? A
Mm.
fever, when you have like the sweats, it's like trying to push something out. It's like, okay, thank you, body, for working to get me to being well. Or like in plant medicine ceremonies, one of my teachers and guides shared that the purge is actually getting well, right? It is celebrating that we're getting well. It's not getting sick. It's we are in the process of getting well.
That's
Yeah.
so my talk therapist that really helped me to uncover trauma over the last year and a half is also a body worker, and she was working on me through this pain. And she actually mentioned, she goes, I'd been asking you how you were feeling in your body during our sessions and was surprised that you had not experienced more pain, because there is a shifting of your physical that happens with the releasing and letting go of traumatic things. And that uh, she helped me to see like that it's like a glacier melting. And so parts of you are defrosting, and there are things that are releasing and letting go. And at the place, the juncture where it goes from frozen to defrosted, that's pain happening. And so this isn't a necessarily a bad thing. It is what happens. And there's just all this stuff in the body that now needs to release, and that hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's an interesting practice, frankly, to be able to focus on what is working when something is not, and to not beat ourselves up for maybe not doing that to all the time or 24/7. We're wired to focus on the negative. Just we're hardwired from back in the day from an evolutionary standpoint to, because the stuff that's negative in our lives, excuse me, actually threatens our survival. So it definitely catches our attention more than the positive stuff. So when one thing is not working, super easy to fixate on that, and it's a journey of learning to be good about appreciating the stuff that is working. And it can be a challenge when as you're getting older, like you mentioned, Halcyon. I remember for the very first time throwing my back out a few years ago, and which is just a layperson's way of talking, like of saying, referring to back spasms and muscle spasms. But just getting out of my car, bam, laid out for a week. I could barely move, and it was all just getting out of my car, just hobbled to my bed. And the only thing that really helped fix that was acupuncture, as it turned out. It took me like days to get an acupuncturist friend over, and it definitely provided almost immediate relief. But that was probably 6 years ago, and I still feel where that happened. Like if I'm like trying to pick something up off the floor, I have got to really watch it, because I can feel exactly where that happened, and it will happen again if I push it. And it's one of those things, like our weird, as we grow and get older and evolve, it's like there's certain things, like our body is just going to change, and it's going to be challenging to do the same things that we're doing, that we used to do easily. So it's important to recognize that and adjust your sails, so to speak.
Move with mindfulness and
Move with
awareness that we
mindfulness.
are
Yeah.
in these very precious bodies. One of the things I really get fascinated with is that inquiry around what is this injury showing me and teaching me, right? When we get laid up, for example, it's usually there's some kind of lesson in there. And one of the things that always comes up for me and so many of the people that I've talked to around injury is like, I was really needing to slow down. I was moving too fast, or I was burning the candle at both ends, or I was pushing too hard. And then the body was like, you better slow down. Where's the balance? And so I think that there's something really important about listening to the body's messages, right? Especially when something's coming up, right? It's not when I'm talking about focusing on the good things that are happening in the body, it's not only that, but there's also some really beautiful inquiries that we can give to our bodies and check in. What is my body trying to tell me right now? Right? Where is this pain coming from on a much deeper level, right? Physically, right? Is there something that happened a long time ago that might have, occurred? So like one of the things I always really find fascinating too is that you're talking about all of a sudden you just got out of your car and you were laid up. You didn't do anything. right? But you must have done something at some point on your timeline and it caught up with you.
Hmm.
You know, like there's a common knot in the shoulder that I see a lot of my clients have. And when I was working at a chiropractor many years ago, I learned about this very common knot and it being associated to a lot of times to ankle injuries from many years before. And so, if we have an ankle injury that doesn't heal properly, over time, the fascial tissue can build up, and then the fascial tissue wraps around the body, and it can it's finite, so it does not have, it doesn't replenish itself. And so if it's built up in one area, it can start to pull on another, and sometimes it can take years till you feel it. So it's like, oh, why do I have this knot that just never goes away, this pain in my shoulder, I never did anything. And there is a lot of times correlations to what's happening in the feet, what's happening in the ankles. Where did I have an injury when I was 5 or 12 that might be showing up now? And so I think it's really powerful to be in that space of inquiry around what's happening in my body, what is this injury trying to tell me, where can I find greater balance? Staying in that mindset, I think, is really powerful, rather than playing the victim, because the victim can very, very often come up to is like, well, that's just how it is, I'm just gonna have to deal with this the rest of my life. Like you were talking about, Halcyon, it's far too common and unfortunate that we get to that place. But I know personally for me, it's like staying curious has been really helpful to move through things.
Well, and you mentioned the connection and the way this can lead to that. I mean, this experience for me has been a big mind opener into the narrative of the body's history. My initial pain, a couple of years ago was the same thing, but it was in my shoulder, and I thought it was from just using my mouse too much. And so now through MRI and everything, I can see, oh, there's damage because of long history of things happening with the spine, which then affects the nerve, which then affects the shoulder, which then affects the arm. And then as I was working with this body worker, and that they were noticing the twist in my spine that caused this to react in this way. And she said, I am going to guess that when you feel anxious in social situations, you twist slightly this direction. And because of the way that you, and that twisting has been it's been influencing the way that you overcompensate here, and this. And she says, next time, if you can feel conscious of it, try to just face straight on when you meet somebody new and you might have some anxiety. And I am going to guess that it will feel very vulnerable for you. And it's like, holy crap. Like there's this mental stuff that had a physical soothing thing that then caused an overreaction that caused this, that caused this. And after decades, now I have this system that needs to, needs a lot of work, and it's
Wow.
and a lot of pain. But it's not a shoulder injury. It's a body with emotional and physical roots to it.
Mm,
Yeah,
so
that's
powerful.
that sparks in me a reminder. I'm gonna jump into the woo pool for a second and jump right
The
back out.
woo
The woo
pool.
pool.
Let's go
kind of
swimming in the woo
kind of
pool.
kind of
Is
a
it the woo woo pool?
the woo
Yeah.
woo. It's a woo woo pool. It's like a whirlpool, but you just drag it out. Woo
You
woo
can wear
pool.
your crystals when you jump in, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Just use them
And it's
as
filled with
floaties.
chakras.
Yeah, yeah. Use them as floaties. But there is a book titled Anatomy of the Spirit, which is by I think the author is like a Harvard doctor / medical intuitive, who talks about how all these areas in the body are connected with areas of the spirit. And if you are doing if you've got issues, let's say with assertiveness, or you got issues with your parents, or you got issues with forgiveness, it is going to manifest in particular areas of the body. If you got issues with your knees, it's because you are, just as an example, if you got knee issues, that means you are playing the victim elsewhere in your life with your relationships with your parents or something like that. It gets very specific, and they're like, if you want to heal this parts of your body, go to these areas of your life, and which is similar to what you just referred to, Halsey. It's like, okay, if I'm I need to stand, I need to be a little less vulnerable, a little more try to get more comfortable in social situations, which will allow you to stand a little bit differently. it's going to allow like your body to eventually fix itself. But all these, it just talks about how all these areas of the body are connected to areas of your spirit, your life, your perspective, your attitude, things like that. If you heal that, you will find that your body will be on a journey of healing as well. And I know people that have experience with that. I feel like I have some experience with that as well. Like being like, how about if I just like try to practice forgiveness? And my body responded as a result. All of a sudden, I'm less stressed in my shoulder, having forgiven my dad for all this stuff, and immediately feeling better in my body. So I don't know, out of the woo
Precious.
pool.
That's not woo. I don't think that's woo at all. I think that's reality. It's like,
I agree. I
emotions
agree, certainly.
store in the body, right? You think about it just on a very simple basic. It's like if you get frustrated about something, then it's likely that our breath is going to get shorter. It's, right? And then we kind of squeeze our bodies a bit, right? We get like tight. And then what happens when we feel tight? There's not room for blood flow, right? Our muscles start to constrict, and then we or same thing with like a grudge. You're holding a grudge towards someone or something. It's tight. I'm tight in my body and I'm tight in my organs. And then over, weeks, months, years, decades of holding on to, even if it's subtle grudge, subtle resentment, subtle emotions, right? It does store up into the body. Dis-ease, right? It is a dis-ease in the body. And so there's so much research now that shows this is like so far beyond the woo pool. And, on the reference of books, there's a really powerful read that's called Healing Through Back Pain or Healing Back Pain by John Sarna. That one changed my life in a huge way. And I know it's changed a lot of people's lives. And it talks a lot about the mind-body connection, psychosomatic connection. And I highly, highly recommend. It helped me when I was healing through an SI joint injury many years ago. SI joint is in the lower back and the hips. And I was really going through a process of feeling really frustrated because it was just this pain that was not going away. And I started to read that book, and it started to show me some things about how I was expecting a certain outcome from doing movements. There's a lot of things in that book, but one of the things that I got out of it was recognizing how when I was in the process of having that chronic pain, I was expecting it to hurt when I would do certain things, and then that was perpetuating it. And so then I started to play with that and change and notice where I was having that expectation and like start to change it. So I'll give you an example. It would hurt when I sneeze. If I would sneeze, then my low back, the injury would flare up, and I was like, oh. And so I braced myself. Every time I would start to feel sneeze coming, I was like, oh God, I don't want to, and then it would hurt. Right. And so then I started to understand that concept. I would start to feel a sneeze coming on and I go, okay, I'm just gonna intentionally relax. It's not, I can just move through it. It's not gonna hurt. And I'll let go of that expectation. Sure enough, what would happen? I sneeze, didn't hurt. And then all of a sudden it was like a light bulb was like, oh, wow, okay, there's actually something here. And so then over some time, I started to have some healing results. I was getting acupuncture and some different modalities that really helped it. And then also there's another part in that book that I'll just touch on briefly is around how sometimes when emotions can be so difficult to face, such as grief, then it can be much simpler or easier for our bodies to process it. And so it's like I can understand what physical body pain is. And so I'll just process that emotional pain in my body rather than having to face it mentally, right? Grieving someone, for example, can be so intensely overwhelming that we just, go like, I can't face that. I'm not going to look at it. It's just too much. And so then the body's like, I'll process it for you. And so that was really powerful to get that download from that book as well, The Healing Back Pain by John Sarna.
That was mentioned by a number of people in a long thread when people were trying to give me advice and suggestions.
It's a game changer.
Along those lines, also that many, many different modalities were mentioned as people were making suggestions. And I think that the truth is that many different things work for many different people. And that's also helpful to remember when something doesn't work. It's really easy for me to get really crushed when I don't get relief from something. It's like, well, there's lots of different ways that bodies respond and lots of different things. Um, and also important to remember that when you're talking with other people about it, it's almost like faith or politics, when you have an absolute belief about something, it's fine for yourself. If you have absolute conviction that a certain healing will work for you, that's great. That's actually placebo-wise, you want to believe 100%, 120% that this is going to work. But it's not a healthy way to be in relationship with others to expect or ask people to accept your healing as their own.
Indeed. It reminds me, and that this might be me dipping my toe back into the pool briefly, but this is my experience, and it's something that I've been able to carry with me forward into my life. There was a time I was hanging out with some friends at a camp out, and we had taken mushrooms. A lot of us had taken mushrooms. I had taken a lot of mushrooms, and was still very much in that space when somebody offered some tea, some hot tea. And so I'm holding my tea mug, and they're pouring boiling water into my mug, but they got jostled, and this hot water went all the way up my arm, up to my elbow, like boiling hot water. But there was a moment on the mushrooms where this water just kind of hung in midair for a nanosecond. And during that second, I was like, oh, I get to, like, the mushrooms are speaking to me. And it's like, oh, I get to choose what happens next. It's like, oh, okay, well, I choose not to be burned by this. I choose not to experience pain by this. And the mushrooms are like, this is a choice. This is a choice you get to make. And so that's the choice I made. Water hits my arm. Like, a number of people saw it, like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I'm like, no, it's actually fine. And I had no reaction. There was no burn, no blistering, no nothing from boiling hot water on my arm, and it was fine. And one of my friends later pulled me aside and was like, "What was that? What just happened?" I'm like, "I don't know. The mushrooms just kind of told me I get to choose what happens." And that was in a wild, crazy weekend. But I've been able to take that forward into my life, more than a decade later. And when I, like, really stub my toe or slam something, or I'm injured or something, I just wake up with a sore ankle or knee, I'm able to kind of flip it in my head and be like, okay, what can I choose here? And more often than not, I'm able to kind of just reframe things, and that pain, that experience goes away. Sometimes it doesn't, and I've got to deal with it for a while. But, like, I've got a chronic shoulder thing myself that's been with me and will likely be with me for the rest of my days. But certain things like that, I'm able to make a choice, and my experience of pain reduces as a result of that.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sparks some inspiration for me around the power of observation when it comes to pain. I have done a couple of Vipassana meditations, which is, using the power of observation of the breath and sensations in the body to find equanimity. And the body is the framework, right? And so it's a training to teach you how to view your body through that lens, right? And so the meditation practice is to go through your entire body and track the sensations in your physical body, whether that's pain or pleasure, and come to a place of equanimity. So if you are scanning your body and you get to a place, say in your shoulder, that has pain, then the teachings of the Buddha say to be witness to the pain, and be witness from a place of recognizing that this too will pass, this too will change, everything is impermanent, and then move on and keep scanning the body. And what can happen is then the pain from that place of equanimity and observation can begin to transform. It's when we have this aversion to the pain, or a craving, as they call it, aversion and craving, is like essentially the teaching is that those are the two things that are the pathways to suffering. And so I learned a lot from doing this meditation practices to be an observer of the sensations in the body, pain or pleasure, from that place of equanimity, and then trusting that this too will change. It's been so incredibly powerful and impactful. So I'll give an example. I had a pretty gnarly moment where I stuck my finger inside of a sewing machine on accident. I was sewing, I was moving too fast, and my middle finger went underneath the needle. And right when it happened, I kind of had a moment of shock, like, oh wow, I just saw the needle go through my fingernail. And I grabbed it and I held it and I went outside, put my feet on the earth. Um, and I just chose to be in that practice of observing the sensation, not freaking out. I was watching the tendency that my nervous system was going to like buzz and be in the like, freak out moment. And I chose to just observe the sensation of pain as if it is any sensation, right? Instead of like just going so deep down a fear portal, I just breathed with it, held it, observed it, noticed it, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And then I took my hand, I just put the pressure, and then I took my hand off, and there was no blood. It was okay. It healed quickly. And I feel like that contributed to my body's ability to be able to process it much more gracefully. Whereas if my adrenaline went up and I freaked out and I was running all around, then that might have made it bleed more, made it much more difficult to process that.
Mm.
So,
And my mind is spinning right now because a lot of people, including my partner, have been trying to help me with the ideas you're talking about, like try to be present with it, try to observe. And and it's a very similar thing to emotional pain and suffering, where it's like, I don't want to feel it, you know, in the immediate moments of, if I go to the pain, it increases. My awareness of it, it gets more intense, and the unpleasantness is greater. And it's really hard for me to intentionally go into the pain. You know, I would much rather put on Netflix and try to get to a place where I'm distracted enough that I can, you know, be okay. And I think the same is true with any sort of pain in our lives, where it's the right now version of your ego says the best idea is avoid this as much as possible. And so it's really good to hear, you know, the benefits of trying to observe it. And actually, not to jump on the psychedelic pain train, but I did have an experience being bit by a centipede while deep in an ayahuasca journey,
Mm.
and a big old jungle centipede, and it
whoa.
was really intense.
Ooh.
That's the
And
worst pain I've ever experienced, is a centipede bite.
Ay,
Yeah.
ay,
I mean,
ay, let alone
luckily,
activated on
yeah,
ayahuasca.
Yeah.
luckily
Oh my
someone
God.
Mhm.
who was a local said, "You're gonna be okay. It's gonna be terrible for 2, 3 hours, but you're gonna be okay." Because I immediately was like, "Oh, I need to go to the hospital. Like, I'm gonna lose my leg." Like, I was shuddering, like my body was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
convulsing. But once I knew I was going to be okay, I went back into the ceremonial space and I sat and shuddered when the waves would come, and was able to observe the what to me was, this is the expanded edge of sensation that I'm experiencing. You know, like this is a human experience at its limit. Now it was helpful because I knew that someone had told me too, it's 2, 3 hours, so I knew it had an end to it. If I didn't have that safety valve, I don't think I could handle it. But maybe I just need to channel my inner spirit centipede and have the courage of Vipassana and try to
Yeah.
Yeah, what
So,
is
yeah.
the symbology of a centipede? Now let's dive all the way into the woo pool.
Yes, but do not do a Google dive into centipede bites. Do not do a Google image search for centipede bites.
Okay, do centipede
It's
symbolism.
yes,
Centipede
exactly.
symbolism. What is the superpower that comes if you get bitten by a centipede? Maybe
You grow
you like
you grow 98 more legs, and
you're able to move much more gracefully.
yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, that reminds me of like what you guys are talking about, is like having a modality to deal with pain when it comes up. You know, Halsey, and I think so many of us, like, we want to just like numb ourselves. We want to distract ourselves from what's happening. But agreeing with Betsy, it's like, no, you actually want to face it, kind of not dive into it, but just engage with it. And that's going to provide, I think, the better results, which is, you know, kind of true with like all sorts of pain in life. Like we can distract ourselves from it, but until we turn around and face it and deal with it, engage with it, until we do that, we're going to keep dealing with the same thing. So like, which that might entail like finally going to the doctor to like deal with some like chronic pain, or trying to, you know, get to, you know, get to a way. There's a meditation guy, a guy I knew who was very into, who taught meditation, was very into it. And his way of dealing with migraines, I was complaining to him about a headache. I wasn't a migraine, but I was complaining about a headache. And he said, what you want to do, all pain radiates from a pinpoint, like a pinpoint size point in your body, whether it's headaches, broken bones, whatever kind of soreness or pain is, it is emanating from a tiny little pinpoint area. So you want to dive into that, focus on that, and just put your awareness into that, and kind of go past the radiation and go to the source and find, like, just mentally experience that pinpoint area, whether it's a headache or whatever in your body. And when you see that, recognize it, acknowledge it, and then blow it away. Talked me through this in a headache, and it went away immediately. Wow. And he was like, now he's like, this is a practice. So the deeper the pain, the more you have to do that. He's all, but it works. And I had been able to do that with various successes based on, you know, like I mentioned before, like really slamming your toe into something, or, you know, just banging something, and that immediate pain radiation, I'm able to kind of stop and get like Betsy, you're talking about, like putting a needle through your finger. I did this with a 2-inch fiberglass splinter that went into my hand, all the way into my hand. So I'm seeing this tiny black nub, like picking out, and it took me almost an hour to slowly pull this thing out, and then it would catch, and I'm like, but it wouldn't distract myself. I would kind of just stay focused on it. And it took me like an hour to pull this 2-inch splinter out of the palm of my hand. But focusing on it, and that point of like that radiating point of pain, allowed me to just process it and just deal with it. And it was over because I was fully present with it. So it's a powerful practice if we can get ourselves to do that.
Yeah, and the spark that I'm receiving from that is the power of meditation. I feel like, you know, the commitment to meditation on a regular basis then can support those moments when we need to focus, right? Because if you're having an experience of needing to focus so clearly and in such a refined way to have a certain outcome, it can be really helpful to have that meditation muscle pumped. So even if it's just 1 to 5 minutes a day, some people meditate for an hour a day, many hours a day. I think it's a really valuable tool and gift that we can give ourselves to support our process of navigating the world that we live in these physical bodies that experience pain and sensation. It is a part of our lives, and it is a part of our world. And it's like, how do we face the pain? Right? That's one saying. You know, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Right? I always keep coming back to that.
Yeah, agreed. But the mind is a super powerful tool. It's like the Swiss Army knife of our emotions and our energetics. And getting some mental mastery, some level of mental mastery, can be applied in so many areas of our life, including dealing with and processing pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I before we get into telling our worst injuries ever stories and having to have a trigger warning on this episode, how about some closing sparks? I'll start off. I'm just so aware of the gift of gratitude that pain can give us, and that, you know, it can easy to fall into a headspace of, you know, I wasn't productive today, I didn't do this. You know, we get caught up in I need to do all this stuff to be okay. And I tell you, you know, being in pain has recalibrated me so dramatically to nothing is wonderful. If I am not hurting, that is a good moment. That is a good day. So I'm super grateful for that gift of pain. And the other closing spark is this shifting of perception of so many people in the world that are living with pain, and that due to injury and pain, there can be an outward appearance of frailty or weakness. And but on the inside, there is this warrior, courageous battle that is being won just to be in the world. And so I have this renewed appreciation and respect for humans on this planet.
Yes, so beautiful. Thank you for that. And I'll actually piggyback on that from my closing spark is compassion and curiosity. Having compassion for others that might be going through pain, especially if somebody is acting out or, shut down or being rude or whatever, they might be experiencing profound levels of pain. So we can have compassion for them and for ourselves, right? When we go through these physical challenges, to have compassion for ourselves and to be patient in the process of healing. And then the curiosity part is my biggest spark, because when we stay curious as to what is the body trying to tell me right now, then we can learn so much, and I'll just also close it out with one of my favorite practices is writing a letter to different parts of my body, especially when something is talking. So like writing a letter, I did that to my SI joint that I mentioned. Dear SI joint, I hear you. I hear you trying to tell me something. I appreciate you. And what are you trying to tell me right now? And then practicing some automatic writing and getting in touch with these different parts of myself has been a very powerful practice to start to clarify what it is that I might need. What are the more intuitive messages that the body is trying to offer, and really listening. Yeah. So I'll
Yeah,
leave
that's
it.
powerful, powerful, Betsy. Thank you. Um, I'm what comes up for me is just a reminder. It's one of the first things we recognize on our once we like really begin our journeys as spiritual beings, is that the first lesson that we get is I am not my body. Like we identify with our bodies, like, oh my, God, I'm really in pain. It's like, no, my shoulder is in pain. My body is in pain. And when you frame it initially with that, when you kind of lose that identity with my body, the body is something that you have. It's a possession. It gets hurt. It's important to keep that mental like framework in place. It allows you to deal with it a lot better. And for me, pain is easy to recognize it. It's easy to interpret it as a negative, but it's also important that we view it as an opportunity. There is an opportunity here for us to reset, recalibrate, go into, like you're saying, Betsy, like really dive into the, what we're feeling and examine how we came to this place. Like what has brought us to this place? And was that process serving us? And we can, really start to look at our lives through the avenue of pain, through the portal of pain, to make some positive changes. And on the other end of that, we might find our lives have greatly improved as a result, which we would not have gotten to had we not experienced this pain. So there's an opportunity here. So.
Amen. Got to tell you, nothing more motivating than trying to avoid exceptional pain.
Or to rise above it.
Rise above it once we're in it. Yeah.
Yeah, to rise above it. I like that phrasing instead of avoid. Right. Let's rise above the pain. Yeah. Beautiful, guys. Thank you so much for this conversation. A lot of inspiration here, and love to just give our listeners out there an opportunity to learn more about who we are and how you might be able to be access to some of our offerings in the world. So, John Halcyon, would you like to share first how people can find your work in the world?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me at johnstin.com, JOHNSTYN. And there are daily gratitude circles. There's a morning love broadcast where we can set our sails to be good people in the world. And there's t-shirts to adorn our beautiful pain-free bodies with messages of love and hope.
Awesome.
Fantastic. I can be found at NuWorldNutritionals.com. More to the point, my nutritional supplements can be found there. We have a number of products designed to help improve your state of mind, like what we've been talking about today. Can help you deal with alleviating symptoms of anxiety, depression, ADHD, even PTSD, other forms of dementia, anything neurological. Our products are quite good at giving you relief, shall we say. So you can find us at nuworldnutritionals.com, spelled NU World Nutritionals, and you can use the code SPARKED for 10% off of all of our products.
Amazing. You guys can find me on poweraffirmation.com or finklehoo.com, which is my last name. So I love helping people to move through physical pain with the body work that I offer. It's a integrative therapeutic style here in Southern California and occasionally other places in the world. And Power Affirmation is really about getting into a healthy relationship with your inner dialogue. So using journaling, meditation, movement practices, and all through embodied affirmation. So you can find a really powerful affirmation for healing, actually. It's called Miraculous Healing. It's on Insight Timer. We'll put the link in the show notes to support you in getting into a healthy mindset in the process of recovering from any kind of illness or physical pain. So you can check that out. Feel free to reach out and say hello. Always love hearing from you. And love to close it out with an affirmation.
Yes, please.
Awesome. So if you like, you're welcome to close your eyes and tune in to this inner focus, inward reflection on an affirmation to support this conversation, knowing that everything is changing. My body is resilient. My body is resilient. So just repeating internally in your mind, my body is resilient. My body is intelligent and has miraculous abilities to heal and transform. My body is intelligent and has miraculous abilities to heal and transform. I believe that my body has the abilities to heal and transform. I believe that my body has the abilities to heal and transform. Remembering that the more that we can have that inner sense of conviction and belief in our body's ability to transform and heal, that gives the body that empowering energy to truly transform. So wishing all of you out there miraculous healing and recovery, navigating this physical body with grace and ease. Thank you, Halcyon and Janus, for this beautiful conversation. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Betsy. Stay smart, people.